Hello everyone and welcome back to Jimmy Talks Jira. If you're a regular here, you will know that my topics can seem a little bit scattered and random, but they all generally relate to my personal experiences as an admin interacting with my users, or the things that I encounter while I'm in the Atlassian online community. This week, I'd like to dive into a bit more about Jira Sprawl. You will know that came up as a trending discussion topic from the Community Roundup, and I think that there's more that we can unpack here to give some tips to admins, as well as users, about how to be informed and how to prevent sprawl. With that, let's dive in. Okay, as most of you will know, the content I do on this channel also ends up as articles in the online community, and this one is no different. If you would prefer to read the text version, there will be a video article combo in the online community and a link in the description so you can go read that as opposed to listening to me talk about it. So I want to start by defining what I am going to call sprawl, and I am going to define it as single-use objects. So those could be, the biggest offenders are custom fields, statuses, and resolutions, where they are only used in one workflow by one issue type, for one specific team or a couple of users, and there isn't really a broad general use for those fields, and you end up with hundreds of very unique snowflake style fields instead of using more generic terms, which could help prevent the amount of cruft that ends up in your system and ends up slowing down performance for you. So based on that, what can you do to try and prevent that sort of thing from happening? Let's start with the admin side of things. So, some of the things you'll want to consider when a new request is posted is, do I already have something that will satisfy this request? And the things that I'm thinking about in this state is, a user on your documentation team has requested a user type field for a peer review. And we already have a field for a reviewer that is being used by the development team for code reviews. If you have used a very specific term such as code reviewer, that makes it harder for you to make it a more general use for other things that could be used outside of code review. However, if you use the term reviewer, then what you are able to do is save yourself having two individual user fields that are only used for their specific purpose, but instead you have a common reviewer field that could be applied to either workflow, and then you save the number of unique custom fields as well as the amount of stuff that needs to be added into screens and so on and so forth. So when you are getting a request, start by asking if you have something that could already satisfy that request. And then if you don't, much like I was just talking about, do you have something that could be used as a generic component to fill that request and others that could be like it, as opposed to meeting the needs of this single team under this single use case for right now? The other thing you'll want to consider is, will this change have a negative impact on anyone else who's using the product? And that is, it could be one of those things where just adding a mandatory field onto a specific transition might be used by another team that isn't aware that they now have to fill in a field that they generally don't really use. So you want to just make sure that you are aware of the things that are happening in the system, so that when a change is requested, you understand appropriately how to respond to the user as far as offering a compromise that could help satisfy the requirement, but not exactly the way they have requested it, or even just having to outright reject it. But I would make sure that if you do have to reject the request, that you do provide some explanation for it to help them understand why that specific request isn't going to meet the needs of everyone, and what they might be able to do instead of fulfilling their request. In addition to that, on a semi-regular basis, I would recommend reviewing what you have in the system. And I know that this is hard. I know I'm personally busy, and I am very guilty of this one myself. But take a look at any unused or backup workflows. Can they be deleted? If they can, delete them. Having cruft in your system is only going to slow down your performance overall, and slow performance leads to unhappy users. Also check out things like custom fields. Check how regularly they're being used. Did you implement a peer reviewer field for the documentation team, but they aren't actually using that field? These are things that you should then follow up with them and say, we put this in place. Is this something that's being used? And if not, can we remove it? And then, it might be one of those things where at one time there was a field in place because there were statistics that they wanted to track and they're no longer being tracked. And do we need to keep that information around? And can we clean up some of these things? Anything you can do to clean up the system and improve performance is going to lead to happy users. Now, that being said, I'm not suggesting that you should go haywire and start deleting everything left, right, and center. You will want to talk to your users and make sure that they understand what happens when data goes away, that it is gone, and to also make sure that you are having this balance between trying to pressure them into removing things versus making sure that they are utilizing everything that they have requested from you. Now, moving over to the end user side of things, I think it's just as important for end users to be aware of the things that go on behind the scenes so that they have a better understanding of what you're thinking about when they make a request so that they can make a more informed request that can help make your life easier as an admin going forward. So end users, here are some things to be aware of that will come about as an admin is working on some of these things for you. So the first thing, which I've mentioned now a few times, is performance. The more unique objects that exist in the system, the slower it's going to get in general. I know there are other factors, but this is definitely one of the things that you can help solve, and that is that when you make a request for a new field, if an admin does propose a compromise in that instead of a peer reviewer field, we'd like to use a more generic field, or instead of in peer review, we already have an in review status, could we use that? Consider that adding unique things is going to add more into the system, and that by taking that compromise, you are not only helping the admin, who's just trying to look out for your best interest, but you're going to make things a little bit easier for yourself in the future. Second, when an admin rejects or proposes a compromise, don't take it personally, and don't see it as the admin trying to avoid doing work and being lazy. They generally are doing it because they are looking out for the best interests of all the users on the platform, including yourself. Third, I would say that when possible, try and keep your admin informed when things that you have requested or things that are on issues aren't being used anymore. I know that the admins generally try and have a good feel for what's going on in the system, but they are not on the ground every single day using all the issue types that have been requested of them to be created. So if you are in an issue and you're like, we have this field and no one ever uses it, and why do we have it here? Let your admin know that there's a field there, and they will follow up with the appropriate people to see if that field can be removed. Anything that you can do that you see to help your admin clean things up is definitely going to be a positive for everyone. If you believe that I have missed anything on this, please feel free to add it to the comments. Please feel free to send me a message directly and let me know. I always want people to keep me honest on these things. If you are more interested in joining the discussion, I have a link to it at the top of this post, which you'll be able to find in the description. Go check out the discussion that's happening about Sprawl. I don't know if they're necessarily talking about the same definition that I have used, but you might be interested in learning more about what people are talking about in that thread. And that's all I have about Sprawl today. I hope you found this video insightful, helpful, and informative. Before I let you go, I want to bring to your attention PM72. If you haven't heard about it, it is a charity event being sponsored by a number of Atlassian solution partners. All of the funds raised during the 72-hour period of the event are going to the Malala Fund, which is a great cause. The PM72 event will be happening June 13th through 16th, depending on time zones. I will actually be one of the presenters there, so be sure to check the link in the description and stay tuned to that event. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel for future content, and please reach out to me either in the comments below or on Twitter if there's a topic you'd like me to cover in the future. I am more than happy to do requests. And as always, thank you for stopping by.